Okay, hello again. We're going to be talking about basically, I would just say boards, audio boards, mixing desks, the Brits sometimes say, but the control mechanism by which we route the sound from one direction to another. So control mixing and monitoring, we do all of those things with the console or the board. Three basic functions: amplification of audio. We need to set a level, and when we say amplification, usually we're thinking of it being raising the volume, but it might also be lowering the volume, but setting an appropriate level. Routing of audio, sending the audio to one particular channel, one particular place where it can be either broadcast or perhaps recorded. So we'll talk about that. And then mixing, where you have multiple items of audio going at the same time, say voice over music is the most basic example there. Have two or more different sources of audio, and they need to be mixed. One needs to be more dominant than the other. So those are the basic functions. The amplification, routing, I've already covered this, I guess. Sending audio, routing is sending one audio or sending audio to one destination or another using the assignment switches. We'll talk more about that. And then the mixing, creating the balance and blending audio from numerous sources. We'll talk about faders, volume controls, it says here, but we'll refer to them mainly as faders. Types of audio control consoles. There are 5 basic types. On-air and production consoles, and those are really the main ones that we're concerned with, and we'll discuss each of those in a good deal of detail. That is, we're not using it as we speak. We may again in the future. This is the board, the one that you're seeing in that picture is the one that is in the old KKOM studio. So we'll perhaps see a video on that if we have time. Virtual consoles that exist within digital audio workstations. So this is true in Adobe Audition, although we don't really use the console as such, or the virtual console. It's there if you want it, but we don't use it as a console exactly, but it certainly is part of Adobe Audition. And there you see a visual representation that you're familiar with from Adobe Audition. And then there are portable mixers that you would use, say we use them a lot with KETR doing football games and basketball games. And you would use them in doing a live music performance. Portable mixers. So we'll talk more about those. Large format mixing desks. This is something you would see in a recording studio. Those of you who have done some work with Brad Davis, who has a recording studio in downtown Commerce, are familiar with that large format mixing desk. It's a big board with more inputs and controls than the typical broadcast oriented board. Looks something like that. What you see there in the lower right-hand corner. So some videos of boards. I'm going to show you one just kind of for fun. It's a video of the original board that was used for KKOM, student radio, going way back. And it's kind of nostalgic for me to look at this. I actually like this board. It's very simple. And maybe that's why I like it, but we'll look at this for a brief time.
Okay, I thought I'd show you some old radio broadcast equipment that I picked up. I plan on putting together a Part 15 AM radio station so I can finally hear oldies and old-time radio programs, etc., etc.
I'll pause this. The dials there are called pots for potentiometers and control the volume of each channel. The A-B switch, and this is useful to talk about because the more modern and technically advanced boards do things that are very similar to this. So you could have two different things that are routed through each one of these channels, and depending on whether you put the switch to A or to B, then you could choose what you wanted to use at any given time. So we still have that with the modern boards. The master here is the overall level. It would set the overall level either high or low. It looks like it's turned all the way up here. The monitor, you can just barely read that, would control the speaker volume in the room. And again, all of these functions still exist on the newer boards. And then I believe that's the Q channel. Hard to read that, but Q is, and we have Q on the new boards. Q it allows you to listen to something just on this board. It is not going out over the air. It's not going into a recording. It's just you're the only one who's able to hear what that is, and then you can decide if that's what you thought it was and if that's what you want. And then this control here is for the phones, your headphones, the level of your headphones, high or low. Same thing with the monitor, setting that speaker level in the room, either high or low. So just you may, this is of course the VU meter that tells you how loud whatever it is, gives you amplitude, tells you how loud what you're sending through the board is at that moment. We tend to have more digital LED meters now as opposed to the old-fashioned VU meter, although you still do see some VU meters. But basically that's indicating amplitude. So kind of interesting, and you might want to go back and have a look at that video further. Let's see here, back to PowerPoint. So on-air consoles, Audio Arts W12. This is the board that is in now the studio in the journalism building, Journalism 313.
Okay, hi, my name is John. I'm going to walk through the board a little bit with you. Let me start off with the input modules. This board has 12 input modules. They are all alike. So when I speak about one, it applies to the remainder of the other 11.
Now, as he's talking about this is set up for a radio broadcasting situation, no doubt in a radio control room. Ours is only set up for production purposes. It is not loaded with things on every channel. You can see they have at least 4 mics set up on this board. They have a couple of CD players, maybe 4 CD players, a couple of old-fashioned turntables for LPs and vinyl records. So this board is used much more to its potential and its capacity than the one that actually we have 2 of them in Journalism 313 Studios.
These modules have 4 outputs, just like you would at home in a home stereo. You have 4 outputs. The one that must be lit is the program one that goes out to the transmitter. And each of these boards can have 2 inputs like you would at home.
So this is similar to the little board I was showing you a moment ago, the old-fashioned board that we used to use. This is the AB function, so you can again have 2 different things wired into that particular channel, and then you can choose A or B. And it looks like to me here that if we choose B, then this is going to be lit up. Most of the time, you probably will use one thing or another, and I don't believe we have multiple things wired into the channels of that board. But this allows you to have 2 different functions, 2 different sources going into each channel, and then you can choose A or B. Program and audition is more of a broadcast type function. Program is what's going out over the air. Audition is going somewhere else. And the most typical thing would be that it's going somewhere, whatever's going through audition in that channel is being recorded somewhere. So you might be recording something on channel 1, and it would be an audition, and then going out over the air in channel 2, and it would be in program.
Either a turntable or a CD, for example. This board, as well as the other 11, also have a cue. When you push the cue button down and you have your headphones on, you can cue up what you're about to play. This button here, when it's red, it's activated. When it's not red, this module's turned off. The slider control adjusts your volume, or your level, I should say, for that particular module.
That's what I refer to as a fader. It is the equivalent of the old dials, the circular pots that I showed you on that first board that we looked at. And it seems obvious to me that this controls the level of whatever is going through that particular channel, but I've learned that is not necessarily obvious to everybody. So if typically your microphone is on channel 1 and you press the button, that red button there to turn it on, and then the fader needs to be pushed up so that you get a good level on your voice. You see this gray mark here is kind of a default position, suggested position for that channel, but it's going to vary a lot depending on the situation, depending on, especially with a microphone, who's speaking into the microphone, the level of their voice. So you can't just always just set it at that position, but that is kind of recommended as a default position. And so I would start there and then adjust as needed, okay?
All right, can you explain what it means to cue?
Yep, so if I wanted to put a record on and have the vinyl get ready to be played, I can't just turn it on and take a guess where the song starts. So what I would do is, off air, I would put on the cue button, have my headphones on, I would cue up a record, cue meaning get the record just so that the song is about to start, and then when I hear it starting, I would just back up the turntable, say 3/4 of the way. What that will allow me to, and then that song is cued.
So that was used more. The cue function is still useful, but it was used a lot more when more typically LPs and 45 RPM records were being played on the air. And every 3 minutes or so, you would have to cue up the next record. And that's the part where you rotate and some of you are familiar with this, you rotate the turntable forward until you hear the audio. You have the needle down on the record, you rotate it forward, you hear the audio, and then you roll it back, as he said, about 3/4 of the way, all the way around, to cue it. And then when you start, then the lead up speed will be such that when the turntable begins to rotate, it will be at top speed or at its intended speed at the time that it gets back to the audio, where the audio begins. That's cueing. But we don't do that as much, although vinyl has made a big comeback, so maybe it's being done more so than it has been in recent years, but we don't use it as much as we once did. We'll watch a little bit more of this. By the way, this video is also available in content on my Leo 2DL.
That will then allow me to do is, when I want to play it on the air, I would set up my level and I would hit the start button, which would turn on this module, start the turntable. So
in this case, I think it says me, meaning the announcer. So it would be actually another channel that he would actually hit the start button there. In this particular case, if this channel is a microphone, then pressing that red button just turns the microphone on. Down the way, I remember seeing here a moment ago turntables on this board, and the start buttons, those red buttons, can be wired so that when you press it, you start the turntable, or you start a CD player, or you start some other mechanical thing by pressing that red button. All right, I think I'll let it go at that, but that's a pretty good, and you can watch some more of it. It goes on for quite a way yet, and as I say, you can watch some more if you want to. This is the KETR board. Some of you do some work with KETR or have in the past.
Welcome to NAB 2012. I'm Jay Tyler, here to introduce you to the brand new Wheatstone LX24, the world's first fully modular IP control surface. And it features 4 programmable outputs: program, audition, auxiliary, offline, individual plus minus from every single channel, 4 internal mix minuses, programmable buttons, traditional AB inputs. Also, with a touch of the select button, it gives you access to thousands of inputs and outputs in your Wheatnet IP system.
I'm going to pause this for a second. What you're seeing here, this is what we tend to have now instead of the VU meter that I was referring to in the video of that older board. And this is set up in a digital configuration, which is different than the old VU meters are set up. You see that the highest level, if you can look at this closely, you see the highest level on this board is 0. And this is the same way it is in Adobe Audition. We're working with digital audio. And when we're working with digital audio, everything is measured in a negative reading. It's negative dB, which is confusing. So, but this is why I say to you, set your projects at a negative 6 dB, or reduce the level of music bed or what have you by a negative 12 dB, because 0 is the top level, and everything is below 0. So, and you see that reflected on that board here. We rarely do we ever want to touch 0. That will put us in the red, and when you get into the red in digital audio, you're probably distorting. You certainly don't want to stay there if you touch it. So we try to be in that yellow area, and again, around a negative 6 dB. Decibels, negative 6 decibels, is a pretty good place to be. All right, and there's the video here of the old, not the very old, but the old from a few years ago, KKOM console, which we may make use of again at some point in the future, but we're not right now. So I'll let it go for now as far as looking at that video. You can look at it if you want to. What are on-air consoles used for? Again, here the term here is on-air console. So we're talking about a broadcast-oriented board. The input selector above each channel, we've already talked about this, allows more than one use of the channel, usually labeled A and B. You saw that just a moment ago in the video, and that way more than one thing can be wired into each channel. Output or assignment buses, typically program or audition, for broadcast purposes, and program that's what's going out live. That's going out over the air, so we are very concerned with that. Audition is convenient and allows us to maybe record something without going over the air. So, for example, you could record your voice in Audition for a voice track piece or something, and you could do that on that board while other things are going out over the air. Listening in queue allows material to be previewed, and it does not go out over the air. Usually in fact always, there is a separate monitor that's built into the board. And so you are aware of the fact that when you hear something on that monitor that's on the board itself, built into the board, and it's usually a much smaller, very small monitor, and the audio quality is kind of tinny, that what you're hearing is in queue. And so you can, it's a good thing because you can separate that and you can identify that as being different from what is on your big speaker, which is usually what's going out over the air. Faders and level control, also sometimes still called pots for potentiometers. We don't really call them pots too much for whatever reason, because as we got away from those dial-like controls, I don't know, people didn't want to call them pots anymore. So usually if we say pots, we're talking about those dials that are circular. You still see those some, but typically more so it's the fader that moves straight up and down and controls the level of however that fader is positioned on that particular channel. That controls the audio level or the amplitude. The on-off switch may be used as a remote start. So that's where we were saying you press the red button and it starts a turntable or a CD player or what have you. It's a remote start, and that's very convenient. We're going to get into next time production consoles, and there'll be a board that we look at that is will be familiar to a lot of you, and it's a different kind of board, and it's in the category of production consoles. So we'll talk about that next time, and thanks, and we'll see you then.